Facebook friends, Helen Archontou here, CEO of the YWCA of Northern New Jersey. Thank you for spending some time with us this morning. We hope that you had you've been enjoying your holidays, whatever you've been celebrating, and we're happy that you're spending some time with us. As you know, we've launched YWTV to try to keep you lifted, engaged, and inspired during this time that we are social distancing. And we've had some wonderful people join us to share some important and inspirational information. And we have another two wonderful people joining us today. So I'm so happy to have with us Helene Klaassens and Sandra Bleckman. You all met Sandra if you joined us a few weeks ago. I say weeks ago because every day seems like a week, and I'm totally lost perspective on time, as I'm sure others have as well. But Sandra's part of our YWCA family. She is part of a project at our Healing Space, our sexual violence program, to provide job support for our survivors. And she has this amazing background that allows her to give us a lot of great information for everyone in our community. So we're so happy to have her join us again today. Thank you.
I'm happy to be back.
Yes, and Helene is also a longtime friend of the YW. We've partnered on many events, and happy to have her here with us again today. Helene, tell us a little bit of you. I know that you are the founder and principal of A.R.E coaching, A.R.E coaching plus mentoring. Tell me a little bit about your background for those of you that might be meeting you for the first time.
Sure. Well, thank you for having me. I'm very excited to join in again another program here. I had been in the corporate environment for over 20 years or so, and about 5 years ago started my coaching and mentoring practice. And much of what I focus on is partnering with individuals that are displaced from their jobs and looking to either define or redefine who and what they'd like to be when they grow up, and also work on more of the tactical side of things when it comes to resumes and LinkedIn and the tools that represent you, all the way through the strategic piece of things around networking and negotiating and interviewing and all that other fun stuff that comes with it. So a bunch of the coaching, the mentoring, and all that tied together.
Wow, that's why you're a perfect partner to be working with Sandra, the two of you together.
Yes.
Both of you bringing your talents to this conversation. So, you know, we know that we have kind of entered into an era of a lot of uncertainty for people. Many people have lost their jobs, or their jobs have been put on pause, and they're feeling uncertain as to whether or not they'll have a job to return to, even though one would think that they might, and others we know actually did lose their jobs, and others were already job seeking before this happened. So, you know, there's a lot of thoughts around, you know, how to manage that during this time. And with that, because we have this pause, it also seems to be a perfect time to reinvent yourself a little bit and kind of, you know, shed a skin, if you will, and, you know, rise possibly, you know, in a different direction. We had a great conversation a few weeks ago with Sandra and Janelle Ranzino, and she I think said something, you know, really poignant that really stuck with me since that conversation about how this is going to be a lot like how 9/11 hit that New York area, and people really, you know, changed how they thought and what they did after that in that New York area. But that because this is, you know, nationwide and quite frankly international, you know, that we're going to see that happen everywhere, that people may not, even if they can return to their jobs, may not want to, even if they can stay in their area, may not want to. And that this is probably really a time where people are going to be thinking and reinventing themselves. So with all that kind of as being the premise of this conversation today about, you know, helping people think about their next move and, you know, possibly reinventing themselves, and definitely having hope, you know, that this is not a time to just despair, that this is a time that, you know, it's kind of the beginning of a new chapter. So let's talk about that. What are some ways that we can utilize our time to prepare for our, prepare productively for going forward? Helene, you want to start, and then we'll let Sandra jump in?
I always suggest, we all have that to-do list that lines up in our mind, the never-ending to-do list, right? And so what I always suggest is creating a permission period for yourself, because we're all in this trying to figure out what does the new normal even look like? How do we define that? But after you kind of work through that permission period to explore a little bit, think about what's on the to-do list, things you haven't had a chance to get to. And it can, in some ways, at times feel overwhelming. A lot of what I try and encourage my candidates to do, the clients that I work with, is to create weekly goals, but create daily structure. And so with that, you have and include the you time in that too. So whether it be you get up in the morning and you work out, you make breakfast, you do laundry, whatever it is, it's all fair game. But then set a time aside, whether it be your LinkedIn profile, or whether it be your resume, whether it be practice, networking and expanding your web. You pick the topic of the day, or create your daily structure, but look to maintain weekly goals, because sometimes life happens in between, and we're our own worst enemies. If we don't get to every single daily thing, we start beating ourselves up. So that weekly goal kind of maintains more of that optimism of, by the end of the week, as long as I get some of these things done, I'm in a good place.
Right. So that does allow for the ebb and flow of each day.
Yes.
Because as we've noted, being home, everyone has a different experience home right now.
Mm-hmm.
You have little kids at home, you may have grown kids at home, you may have no kids at home, you may be social distancing and quarantining solo, you may have a full house with extended family. So depending on all of that, your ability to focus, definitely changes.
Absolutely.
Sandra, what's your thought to kind of jump off that as well?
Well, I think we all too often, like Helene said, we put a lot of pressure on ourselves, right? And I think we talk about being productive during this time. And at the beginning, everyone's like, I'm going to get this done, I'm going to get this done, I'm going to get this done. And I think we put too much pressure on ourselves, because we all have, as you said, some of us are still working from home, some of us are furloughed, some of us don't know. And I think if it becomes very overwhelming, right? We can let it overwhelm us. And I think that we need to start taking things in smaller pieces, like you said, your daily goal list or something like that. But I think we can't measure our productivity against someone else's, right? So being productive for me might be that I made dinner today, right? And being productive for you, Helen, might be cleaned out your closet, or you thought of a great activity for your kids to do today. Mm-hmm. So I think that we have to, not put ourselves all in the same bucket, and take things one step at a time. Because how many times have we said, oh, if I only had time, I'd do this, yeah. Right? And so I've been talking to people who are furloughed, laid off, whatever it might be, and taking small steps, like list what your skill set is, right? Maybe that's your goal for the day. Make that list, start, thinking about those kind of things. So I think it's really all relative to yourself and your situation at the time.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think one of the things right now, because we are so limited with personal interaction, one of the things I've noticed is that a lot of us are heavily relying on social media, right, for our connections with people. And one of the, I guess, challenges of doing that is you're watching what everyone else is doing and feeling like you should be measured against that. What are some of your thoughts on that?
I think that it's in our nature to think that we have to keep up with the Joneses, right? It's always been like that. When I was a kid, my mother would say, don't look at, worry about yourself, don't worry about what everyone else is doing, right? And I think that with social media, that people use social media in many different ways. And some people are, oh, look at what I'm doing. And that's great, but that's not what's great for all of us. So you have to examine your own situation and kind of put it in perspective to you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes, for sure. For sure. So when it comes to exploring new opportunities, how do we empower ourselves to do that? And, what might some of those opportunities look like? I know you Helene, went through a kind of a list and you gave some suggestions too. Any other thoughts on that?
I always have individuals step back and say, it's a very somewhat of a simple exercise, but it can take quite a bit of reflective thought. And what does ideal look like for you right now? Mm-hmm. Because now is going to be very different than what 2 weeks, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years might look like. So define what ideal looks like with no limits, just straight off, like my wish list. What would ideal look like? Then a second column is more of what are the nice to haves. These would be great to have, but not absolutely musts. They're just nice to have. And then think about what the absolute nots are. No way in heck do I ever want to do this, or have I ever, I'm never going there. And then start thinking about, am I situated? Am I ready to go? Do I have all the skills of the must-haves? Are there tools, are there resources, are there things that I can learn? Are there people that I can connect with that can kind of help better define the must-haves for me? And start creating bridges perhaps, because not everybody's going to be able to go from point A to point B, one step to the next. So are there bridges that you can start creating? Are there people you can start reaching out to and learning? I think the biggest piece is that learning element of what can we learn, what can we continue to do to enhance our skills. But understanding what our interests are first is probably most important. What are those must-haves?
That's great. Sandy?
Absolutely, I agree. And it's funny that you say, like, as one of the other things is not just your skill sets, but what are the skills you want to achieve? Make that list, right? And kind of work towards it. And maybe it's a certification for someone. Maybe it's just a small little learning, a breathing technique or meditation or something like that. So I think once you put that in perspective, and I always say, write your dreams down, right? When you put it out in the universe, things come to you. So let everyone know what it is that you really, and think about those dreams and goals. And it doesn't have to be today. Like you said, we don't know what's happening, 2 weeks from now, 2 years from now. And I always tell people, don't give up, right? Write it down, write your ideals. And as you said, from point A to point B, it's never a straight line. Yeah. It's never the line that you think it's going to be. And when I talk to my students, I'm an adjunct professor. So when I talk to them, I say, don't get so fixated on that line, that straight line, right? Because there are variations and we don't always know what gets us to point B, right? I always say when I was, it's a funny story, I was working for someone, I was in human resources, he said, if you get your master's, you're going to get promoted. Great, I'm gonna go get my master's. I hadn't been in school in 13 years. I went and got my master's, and guess what? I got laid off, not promoted. So then it was like, oh, I'm deflated. What did I get my master's for? And then several years later, I was working for a university, not as a professor, and someone came up to me and said, Sandy, do you have your master's? I said, yes. And they said, well, why aren't you teaching for us? And that's how I started teaching. And I thought, oh, that's why I got my master's. It wasn't necessarily. So I think taking every opportunity to learn something, never turn it down, right? Yeah. And there are opportunities. Now we've seen some free classes from some of the Ivy League schools. There are some classes that maybe you do want to invest in because that's something that you've always wanted to take that class in. Or, I mean, I think that you just have to kind of, anything is take it as a learning opportunity. And we really all can learn from this.
So all the, these are great techniques, but all the techniques that you're identifying to me seem like something that you have to be in like the headspace to do this, right? And so people may not be in a positive headspace right now. They may be feeling some despair. I mean, the reality of it is, daily we're hearing stories about people that are hospitalized and, dying. We're have these briefings going on, for, multiple states simultaneously on the news, kind of telling us about what's ahead. And you're also feeling maybe some of the other pressures that we talked about. How is it that you can maintain your optimism and kind of harness that hope, to do some of these great skills?
I think the biggest thing that comes from me is taking a step back and thinking about what's within your control. What is it I can control? What are the external factors that I don't have any control over? It just is. And becoming a little bit more comfortable. And when I say becoming more comfortable, it takes some time. It's a very conscious effort, but it is what it is. I can't change what's going out in the world today, although I can do my part to create a safer environment for me, my family, for those around me. But thinking about what's within my control and accepting that, and then saying, okay, if this isn't what's in control, I can control this. It might be, again, more of scheduling of your time. It might be planning out dinners. It might be creating time with your family. But what can I control? And then also thinking about one other technique I found very helpful is, what am I thankful for today? Kind of a gratitude journal per se. Some individuals like to kick off their day by thinking like, this is three great things that I'm grateful for that I can control and that I'm really happy about where I'm at right now. Other individuals like to close the day that way and say at the end of the day, like, wow, look what I've accomplished. Look what I'm grateful for. So consciously thinking about those things. What can I control? What's within my realm? And then what am I grateful for?
Great. Great.
Yeah.
Lee?
I definitely agree. I mean, you have to really, it's hard though, because it does become overwhelming and you're hearing so many difficult things. And so so if you take things, as I said, small, right? Small little steps, right? Today, I'm going to be thankful that I'm here. I have my family with me. It changes your perspective a little bit. And it does give you hope, because we all know that we will get past this, right? You have to think about that. And there are so many things out of our control, but we have to do our little part each day to stay in control. And I think when we feel that way and we appreciate what some people have spent time, I asked my students the other day, and one of my students said, I never really got to spend time with my family, and I've spent so much time with my parents, and I'm so grateful right now. And that alone to me was like, well, there's your win right there, right?
Yeah.
And so that's hopeful, right? That's hope, because now not only are we spending time, but it'll change our relationship in the future.
Yep. That's wonderful. So we need to focus on things that we have control over, and, if need be, actually sit down and write them out, just to kind of help get ourselves into that positive place. So that's wonderful. And then gratitude, finding a time also to be thankful for, figure out what we're thankful for and fit that into your day as well. And those are two ways to really keep ourselves positive and optimistic during this time. So again, we know that people are in lots of different spaces right now. And any last words of advice from each of you before we close out that you'd want to share with someone who's, really trying to harness hope and kind of bridge themselves in this time? Helene?
I would say, so for me, know that whether you're transitioning, whether you're thinking of transitioning, whether you're just trying to get yourself through each and every day, that it's truly, a transition is a process. And know that it's much more like a roller coaster ride, not a linear, I did this. That roller coaster may go fast, may go slow, may go forward, may go backwards and loop back. Know that, thinking about those small pieces that are within your realm, within control, the small wins, hey, I got up and I put my jeans on today instead of the sweatpants, it's a good day. And trying to intentionally look for those wins, because it will be a roller coaster ride.
Yeah.
Okay. Absolutely. And I would just say, don't put too much pressure on yourself. Take things one day at a time in small pieces. Don't compare yourself to anyone else, right? You need to find that spirit within yourself to empower yourself, right? And so just by thinking of those daily little wins, that starts building our spirit. And think about all the good things about yourself, right? And so take those and harness that spirit and your hope, and I think that will get you through.
That's wonderful. Well, thank you both. And I know as we were prepping and talking, you guys were referencing a wonderful list that Helene had come across. Can you tell us a little bit about that list? And we are going to post that for everybody. But Helene, could you share a little bit about that with us?
Oh yeah, it was labeled as sanity savers, and it for all levels, for yourself, for your family, for your children, for whoever's with you. But the sanity savers, Salesforce.com came up with the list, and I've repurposed it to really help provide as a resource and a tool. And it's basically a list, whether health-wise, around eating habits, around yoga, different exercises, all the way to virtual tours of everything you can imagine, to shows you can watch, to free websites where you can actually, a lot of the Ivy League schools are providing free education courses that you can tap into. So it's a resource document, but it has a lot of really great, valuable information for all ages, genders, and interests.
Yeah, that's great.
And I was completely impressed by it, to be honest with you. I was like, when she spoke of it, I saw it, I thought, oh, it would be, and it was like very, very comprehensive. There's something for everyone on it.
Yep.
That's great. Because I do think, and, as we said here, there were some people that kind of jumped into this quarantine and they were like, hit the ground running, cleaning closets and, cooking new dishes and, working out twice a day, and they really like hit it. And then there are people like me who finally this weekend cleaned off my dresser, and I was like, wow, and it took 3 hours because that's how messy it was. But the reality of it is, we're all working at our own pace because we all have different things going on at home. And so it's great to have a list like that. I haven't seen it yet, but I'm looking forward to it, because that way when there is the ebb and flow of this time together, that it will allow you some, ideas, and, then you can, also feel a little bit kind of lifted from this time, also.
Absolutely.
So wonderful. Well, friends, thank you for joining us out there in Facebook world. And we hope that you got a lot out of this discussion. I know that I did. And Helene and Sandra, we're so grateful that you came and shared your tips and techniques with us and your skill. And you definitely gave us a lot to think about, how to have a stronger and more confident kind of place to be in during these career journeys that many of us are on, and even those of us that are just on a hiatus from our kind of normal life. It definitely gives a lot of perspective for us as well. So we thank you, and who knows, we may sit together again in another fashion on YWTV, or I'm very confident in the future again. Thank you both for being such good friends to the YW and supporting our work all the time.
Great.
Thank you so much for having us.
And for those of you watching, we have a few more wonderful virtual programs this week. On Thursday, we have Join Hearts in Motion, cardio dance party that you can do with your kids and your families. That will be a lot of fun. And my kids are on spring break this week, so we will definitely be looking for activities like that to keep us all occupied. And on Friday, it's going to be our small business focus. Sarah Walton will be joining us and talking about how to pivot and moving forward during this challenging times. She's been doing some wonderful Facebook Lives daily with her group to kind of keep people focused. As always, you can follow us on social media. Stay connected through ywcanj.org, our website, or any of our social media platforms, and you can also subscribe to our emails. We are sending out blasts about different activities going on. And most importantly, stay healthy, stay well, and we look forward to being together again soon. And thanks again, Helene and Sandra. Thank you for this time together today. Be well. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Yeah.